Welcome, everybody. Good evening. This is Todd Hill-Jones, president of the Stonewall Democrats of Dallas, and I want to welcome you all to our August meeting. So before we get started, one house cleaning item, if you will, to make note of for this evening is that as part of our strategic plan for Stonewall Dallas, one of the items that we wanted to do is allow the vice president, our Susie Hess, an opportunity to chair a meeting this year. And so in discussions with Susie, she wanted to chair the meeting tonight. And so with that, I'd like to recognize Susie Hess, our vice president, who will be chairing tonight's meeting. Susie, I yield to you.
Great, thank you so much. We really appreciate everyone's attendance tonight. For our meeting, Stonewall Democrats of Dallas, we are excited to welcome candidate for Texas Attorney General Joe Jaworski, and we're going to allow him to kick us off as the first part of our presentation. He'll speak for about 10 to 12 minutes, and then we'll have an opportunity for questions and answers. If you are a precinct chair, before we get started, we would love for you to rename yourself a precinct chair, a candidate for office. Go ahead and add that to your name so that we can be sure to celebrate you and as either a candidate or an active precinct chair. We have several members of the board already set up as co-hosts, and they'll be monitoring the chat as well. So if you have questions for Joe Jaworski, please put them in the chat. So we do have people on mute to minimize the background noise. So with that, we will go ahead and introduce Joe Jaworski, candidate for Attorney General of the state of Texas. Take it away, Joe.
Thank you, Susie Hess, VP, but you'll be running the show one day soon, I'm sure. But hey, Todd, thank you so much for Mr. President, for getting me involved in this wonderful crowd in Dallas, which, is dear to me because my wife's from Dallas. We met in law school, 3 weeks into it, because her name's Hughes, my name's Jaworski. So you'll note the proximity alphabetically. And yes, your state's #1 law school arranges the first year law school lockers alphabetically, like we're in 5th grade. You know what I'm saying? And anyway, we met there getting our books for class. And we had a big argument as to whether we'd live in Dallas or Houston, where I'm from. And we just let the free market decide. We got jobs for the summer in Dallas and in Houston. We did not get permanent offers in Dallas, so we came to Houston. But then we went to Galveston and made a life for our family and ourselves professionally there. I served as mayor of Galveston after Hurricane Ike, and that was a great opportunity in a sort of nonpartisan way to do some local leadership. And I took a break after that term as mayor to mediate and to raise our family. It was probably after the 20th COVID briefing from Donald Trump where I finally threw the newspaper down and I said, I just can't take it anymore. I feel like I'm leaving a lot on the table. I need to get involved. I need to help the problem. I need to help solve the problem. It's getting worse. I think we all agree. There are a bunch of people that are now making decisions that are causing death and destruction in our state. Am I exaggerating? I don't think I am. It just seems to get worse every week. And so I see my good friend Charlie Gehring, who's on the call as well, with many other candidates. I am so proud to stand shoulder to shoulder with you because Democrats have got to step up. Nothing will change unless we are filling the ranks of these positions and running for office. It is my honor, it's my privilege to ask for your vote as your next Texas Attorney General. So I'm going to ask twice. I'm going to ask you to vote for me in the Democratic primary and then again in the general when we're facing, as I contend we will, Ken Paxton. So Madam Vice President Susie Hess, if I might, let me give you a few moments of our path to victory, and then I'm going to quickly go through my platform, which you can read in more detail on our website, Jaworski for Texas. And I would like to just put that up there. I mean, you know, these days with long names and, you know, is it FOR or is it the numeral 4? But jaworskifortexas.com is the website. And I'll ask again, but, you know, guys, these campaigns cost money to be effective. And I would ask, you know, at the outset, without being awkward about it, if you are in a position and you like what you hear, maybe you love what you hear, please help me. There is an annoying green button that says donate today, and all sums are welcome. Here's how we're going to win. Okay. And this is not just rhetoric or feeling optimistic. This is how we're going to elect the first Democrat statewide in over a generation. And it goes something like this. The Attorney General, I don't need to spend a lot of time, is a criminal. He has got criminal exposure. Even the Republicans agree with this. They're running 2 statewide office holders against him in their own primary. So that is abnormal, to say the least. George P. Bush is the current land commissioner. Eva Guzman had to resign to run, and she was brought in 10 days after Bush announced. He didn't even finish his victory lap. Texans for Lawsuit Reform said, no, George, you're not the answer. We'll get Eva Guzman to retire off the Supreme Court, give her a bunch of money. And she is, you know, obviously a very robust candidate in her own right. Here's the point. Paxton is not going to give in. Bush is already committed, and Eva Guzman retired from her cushy job at the Supreme Court. So you're going to have 3 statewide office holders. They will raise around $35 million among the 3 of them. They will spend it cutting each other up. Here's the best part. Paxton's already been endorsed by Trump. Bush is taking the position that Trump was fooled into the endorsement, which is just a remarkable position to take. Guzman is very uneven about whether she's for Trump or not, but she's actually been quoted as having drunk the Kool-Aid and saying, yes, of course, I'd like his endorsement. But Paxton will survive it, just like 10 years ago when Ted Cruz got that victory over David Dewhurst. So remember, we haven't even redistricted yet. It's not going to happen until, say, September, October. Then the litigation will follow. Well, 10 years ago, when the redistricting was done during the 140-day session and the litigation followed, the civil rights, the voting rights litigation followed, there was a delayed primary. Well, here it's going to really be delayed because they haven't even redistricted. So let's just use the same calendar as 10 years ago. They're going to spend $35 million, I contend, cutting each other up. The nominee will emerge in late July 2022, and it will be, Mr. Trump picked me. This will be after Mr. Paxton will be indicted again in the federal system. And the way they're going to spin that, folks, is, see, that's how they treat a good man who Trump supports. The Biden deep state Department of Justice is coming after me for just doing my job. I mean, it'll make our heads explode, but that is actually the argument that they're going to make. Well, here's why we win, to get back to the point. I think that primary message is going to be so repugnant, and it's going to repel reasonable Republicans, reasonable independents and libertarians, and every Democrat we can register and turn out in a number sufficient to overcome the cult. Now, you know that a lot more people vote in a general election than do a primary. And that's why I think we have a chance, even more than a chance, why we have a path to victory. I have a general election platform that I'm proud to preview in a primary because it's good for Texas. And we are the party that's good for Texas. So may I share it with you, Susie?
Absolutely. Please go ahead.
Okay. So with that very hopeful message of how the calendar plays out, just know that you have a motivated candidate. I've already raised $850,000, and that's just me calling my friends. Now I've hired a fundraiser from the nonprofit world, and we are going to triple that number. I mean, we need to raise $5 million for this primary, and then it's off to the races. With this message, I think we can do it. Number one, Stonewall Democrats of Dallas. As your Texas Attorney General, I will never embarrass you in the United States Supreme Court. I'll never file frivolous litigation in any court like Mr. Paxton is wont to do. When General Jaworski files, it will be to protect your civil rights, your consumer rights in state and federal court, not to pull a political stunt. Number two, I will support the Affordable Care Act, period, end of story. And what that means is you'll finally have a statewide constitutional executive candidate who understands that Texas must draw down the $5.6 billion a year in the Medicaid match. Well, that's a lot of insurance for men, women, and children. And most importantly, and this is the first time you'll hear me say rural, but not the last, it will sustain our vital network of rural and county hospitals. This is where a lot of people get their care. And I love appearing in front of Republican groups because, which I really haven't had much chance to do, but I will. But when I do, they start nodding their heads when I tell them this. Who do you think's paying for the county and indigent health care now? Well, property owners. All of us who are proud enough to own our own homes pay, as you know, a property tax bill every year. And on that county line, it is higher than it needs to be because Abbott, Patrick, and their conciliary, Mr. Paxton, and the whole Republican, think tank in the legislature are not accepting our tax dollars back to Texas. They don't want it because of some obsession with freedom and libertarianism. That's the same argument that turned the lights off in Winter Storm Uri back in February. We don't want to be part of that federal network of energy regulation. We don't want to have anything to do with the Affordable Care Act because we're Texas, we're exceptional, we're independent. Meantime, people are dying. The lights didn't turn on, and they turn off. So I'm calling it out for what it is. It's the height of hypocrisy. It is not a thinking person's platform. Okay, so you're going to have an attorney general who's going to speak truth to power on that. And I'm going to tell Republicans in the general election right to their face, you guys are getting screwed. That's our tax dollars trying to come home. But because of some sort of fetish with libertarianism, they want to let the money go to New York, Wisconsin, and Michigan. It isn't right. Number three, and this is my favorite because it is so edgy. Or is it? Or is it? Now, as Attorney General, I cannot pass a law by myself. The legislature does that. And I can be a thought leader, however, as I go around the state. And in fact, I think I have a duty to be a thought leader, certainly on matters of criminal and social justice reform. So I think Texas should legalize recreational use cannabis. I say Texas should legalize recreational use cannabis for these reasons. The money, number one. Why is the cartel making the money when the state of Texas, like Colorado, could tax it and generate $1.1 billion every biennium? I mean, that's a lot of money for education, mental health. How about funding certain first responders that could show up at the scene of a crisis without a gun, but with skilled counselors who can save lives and solve the problem? It's also good for jobs. And this is based on the fact that all the states that border us have either legal or de facto legal. Oklahoma, Arkansas, New Mexico, Louisiana, they're all ahead of us. So much for Texas exceptionalism. But what you'll find is 30,000 jobs minimum. And I'm not talking about temporary jobs. I'm talking about industry jobs. 100 years ago, if you grew grapes and made wine, you go to prison because we had prohibition. Well, that didn't last for very long. Now, I welcome you to drive from Austin, Texas to Fredericksburg along State Highway 290, and you'll see like 40 or 50 wineries. I mean, it's just a true pleasure. It's tourism, it's an art form. And the same could be said as a cash crop for rural Texas as well, to grow first grade cannabis. Willie Nelson's doing it out of the state. He's just waiting to do it back in Texas. I'm doing this kind of with a smile on my face, but it's really not funny. It's serious money. It's serious jobs. And let's even get more serious about it. We have veterans and chronic pain sufferers and people suffering from PTSD that will benefit so greatly by this wellness alternative, this palliative. And finally, if we allow this, we will fight a winning war against opioid addiction because we will have such a superior alternative. I mean, right now it's just pills, pills, pills. but perhaps the most important reason for us to legalize recreational use cannabis is the ushering in of long overdue social and criminal justice reform, Susie. I ask you, how much longer is Texas going to arrest young adults? And let's be honest, typically young adults of color, for possessing a flower that grows out of the ground so that we can put them in prison, largely private prisons, so that someone can make a profit off their incarceration. Now, that is the definition of a sick society. I maintain the better way is to remove this wasteful, petty prosecution from the books. And here's the best reason, because when we do so, we fund law enforcement. We fund our prosecutors and police departments because we save $300 million a year. And that is a conservative estimate. So we can fight real crime, so that we can fight gun crime, cartel crime, domestic abuse, violence, murder, rape, human trafficking. And we can put those people that broke into our public house, the Capitol, in jail, not young adults who otherwise have a bright future. And so let me,
true.
Well,
So
there you
true.
go, Susie. See, I mean, I know you're on board.
Top 3 of your platform, and I know that you have many other things, and you've got a strong history, you know, with your dad being the Watergate special counsel who
Grandfather.
Your grandfather, sorry.
Sure. But I was close with him. I lived with him my freshman year of college. I mean, I was very close with Leon Jaworski. His lesson is strong in my mind and heart.
How did that influence you growing up to want to fight for justice?
Well, my dad and my grandfather were both trial lawyers, and my grandfather, obviously the more famous of the two. But, you know, I grew up with a sort of devout sort of adherence to respect the rule of law and to respect lawyers. I mean, people make jokes about it in LA law and all these things, you know, but, you know, the way Leon Jaworski was, just so you know, when he wrote his memoir, as they all did in Watergate, John Dean, Charles Colson, Haldeman, Ehrlichman, and the good guys too, Leon Jaworski, Woodward, Bernstein, when everyone wrote their memoir, they got paid, right? Leon Jaworski was given a $250,000 check by his publisher in 1975. And he said, I cannot accept that. And they were like, excuse me? He goes, no, I cannot profit off my public service. I didn't do it for that reason. Well, he was persuaded by his partners, you know, I mean, don't give it back to the publishing company. So he created a foundation called the Leon Jaworski Foundation. I'm now the vice chair on it. It's all family. And little did you know, 40 years later, that I would meet at a Dallas fundraiser at former Representative Harriet Earhart's house. I would meet the beneficiary of the trust, which funds a scholarship, actually 2 scholarships every year at Baylor Law School, where my grandfather went. And it allows people who can't afford that education to get it. A male and a female get it every year, the Leon Jaworski Scholarship. And it's proud to know that his alma mater is training the next generation of attorneys.
Fantastic. Well, we already have some questions in the chat, so I'd just like to reach out to our members. The first one that appears to have come through says—
One from Mike at 642.
Right, Mike Lavallo, who is on our bylaws committee, by the way. We suck as Democrats with our marketing when it comes to things like defund the police, et cetera. We use terminology that doesn't work for the average person. And how can and will you market yourself to Democrats and independents with respect to this?
Well, and you've heard some of it. I mean, I agree with you. It's all in the messaging. And I mean, you've heard me at least say now 2 items in the Medicaid match, you know, which has been torn up with this Obamacare versus non-Obamacare. Well, I'm just talking about, I want my tax dollars back if they're coming back. Let's don't give it to New York and California. And why should your property tax bill be higher just because of Greg Abbott's primary election? Secondly, cannabis, ooh, that's edgy, but actually, in fact, this is widely supported both by Republicans and Democrats, conservatives and liberals, and it will fund the police so that they can fight real crime. You know, local control, I haven't even talked about that yet. It is something that the conservatives used to support, and I think they still do, even if the GOP has forgotten it. Local government is the best government because it's the most responsive government. And that is why we ought to allow federalism to go from the top all the way to the bottom, not be stopped because Abbott and Patrick want to tell cities what to do. If Washington, D.C. can't tell Texas what to do, well, then Austin should be able to allow Corpus Christi and Denton and Kerr County and school boards to do what they think best because they are popularly elected local leaders. If they get it wrong, the voters will let them know.
Great. Kind of along those lines, do you think the lower court rulings and the lawsuits filed by multiple cities, counties, and ISD against Governor Abbott's executive order preventing local officials from instituting public health measures should be upheld by the Supreme Court of Texas? So this is from Cannon Brown. Is there legal justification for upholding the lower court rulings?
Absolutely, there is. And if the Texas Supreme Court were to follow the law, which I hope they will, they would support the lower court orders that are supporting Clay Jenkins and Lena Hidalgo and the mask mandates that school districts and county health officials are asserting, because there's no reason not to. Greg Abbott is misinterpreting the Texas Disaster Act of 1975. His executive order 38 doesn't do anything other than prevent other people from doing things. And it's like that great line in Vertigo, you know, there's not a lot of law about things left undone. Well, that's similar to the situation right here. You know, Greg Abbott actually has the legal authority to issue a mask mandate because the language requires him to meet the moment, that is, to meet the danger presented by a disaster. That's the exact words I used in a tweet that I put out today. I tried to condense it down if y'all saw the tweet. And what he's doing now is nothing. He's saying, no, the danger is actually my political viability and my primary, not COVID-19. So I'm going to insist that nobody allow a mask mandate because that'll be popular in that is not what the Texas Disaster Act of 1975 is intended for. So the fact is, we've always allowed local leaders to respond to a disaster. I did it as mayor. I did it as mayor pro tem with the great Lyda Ann Thomas, God rest her soul, after Hurricane Rita. You have to do your own work. That's what Clay Jenkins and others are trying to do. Abbott does not have the legal authority to stop them.
Great. Local attorney and precinct chair and candidate for office, Allison Grinter, asks about the newly proposed and existing voter suppression laws. Are you open to refusing to defend these laws as Attorney General?
Short answer, yes. And I would say the same thing about the heartbeat bill. So this is the beauty thing. And Allison, I appreciate the question because it allows me to say one of my favorite lines. And it's not just a line, it's the truth. The Attorney General is not the governor's lawyer. The Attorney General is not the legislature's lawyer. The Attorney General is the people's lawyer. Now let that sit just for a minute. You're a statewide constitutional executive. You're co-equal to the governor. You have different job responsibilities, but you're not subservient to the governor. I mean, the governor's, sort of a Reconstruction era creation. The legislature is a part-time legislature, but the Attorney General is 24/7. I'm not saying, you're the most powerful, but you are your own executive. You have a duty to interpret the law. And frankly, as a Texas lawyer, I have that duty anyway. It's very clear that the rules of disciplinary procedure and the rules of professional conduct require every Texas lawyer, and I'm sure every other state has a similar rule, Susie, that require you to issue your own analysis when your client says, here's what I want you to do. And if you think it is a lie or it is unconstitutional, you have a duty of candor to the court and certainly to the public opinion to say so. So just because, the legislature had the poor judgment to pass a heartbeat bill because they wanted to see Amy Coney Barrett, be their final vote. That doesn't mean I have to defend it.
Yes, very good point. Hassani Burton, who's a precinct chair, former candidate for Congress and potential candidate for Congress upcoming, depending on redistricting. He asks, what, if at all, do you see your role in Abbott, Paxton, and the Speaker blocking expansion of Medicaid in Texas? So that kind of tags along to one of your platforms.
Yeah. Well, first off, a thought leader. Imagine, it's just, we haven't seen this in 30 years of someone having an independent thought from, the troika. So I wouldn't just wait till the end and then sandbag the issue. But, I think that the Attorney General has an opinion, a legal opinion section, and, with allies in the legislature, they can ask for legal opinions on this. I certainly have the bully pulpit. Imagine an unembattled Attorney General, because Ken Paxton sure won't do this, going to different law school campuses within our state every quarter and having an open house or a Q&A session like this. Imagine having an actual open house at the Attorney General's office. It's been decades since that was done, but Jim Maddox left his door open. Okay, people could actually go up there and visit him. I know it's a different time now, but it's a way of being. There also may well be a lawsuit to be filed. I certainly intend that this money that is ours come home. I don't know that I've thought it through to the point where I know exactly what lawsuit I'd file, but that's public money trying to come back to Texas, and it is not enough just to say, well, politically, we don't want it. There may be a lawsuit that I file on behalf of local governments that would benefit because I have standing to do that as Attorney General.
Interesting. Really, really interesting. We have some other questions that are related to marijuana legalization, legalizing and regulating marijuana.
Mhm.
And I guess some worries about fentanyl being sprayed on commercial crops. Would you be open to the regulation of marijuana in the event the ledge decided to legalize it? And also, part two of this relating to the same topic is retroactive expungement of marijuana convictions.
Sure, and to the extent that I would be an advocate for it as a candidate, which I clearly am, my goal would be to be testifying in the next legislative session in 2023 as an advocate. And certainly I would expect there to be reasonable regulation on this. The whole idea is that the money be spread around, that it be properly priced in terms of the tax like Colorado does, so as not to empower a black market, which California does, unfortunately. The taxes are so high there that, the black market's back in play. Fentanyl on commercial grade, that concerns me. Certainly that should be easily defeated. And absolutely, I would advocate for expungement if that's all you've got is a personal possession marijuana conviction, and we've now legalized it. Let's be fair, that needs to be removed as a stigma. And if you're in jail and that's all you've done, to be fair, you need to be let out if that's it. So that goes hand in hand. Something a little more down the road would be a discussion of communities of color who've been largely impacted by these laws having sort of entitlement is not the right word, but a sort of enhancement in the commercialization of it, be given some preferences, I think is the word. That's something that's totally out of my bailiwick, but if the legislature wants to support something like that, I will not stand in their way.
Okay, great. I think we've got time for maybe one more question, and
You guys are so generous. I appreciate this.
I'll read it from a relatively new precinct chair in my area out here in House District 113. Thank you, Miss Vita. Funding is needed in education. Police funding is plentiful, but education is down so low, it can't get any worse. Our children need us to fight for them. Are there marijuana taxes for education, allowing for putting back art classes, trade classes, community awareness classes? You know, is that one potential use of the $1 billion that you're looking at?
Absolutely. I mean, again, it's, you know, you wonder who makes these decisions, you know, largely the legislature, and that it should be used for renourishing communities that were abused. And that would be, I think, a very appropriate use of the money. And, you know, certainly I could work those into my remarks, you know, and I'm sure that here's what I would like to envision is that, you know, the long road to November 8th, 2022 ends in victory. That I immediately appoint my deputies, who will be men and women who are white and of color. It's going to be all talented attorneys, but it's going to actually reflect the face of Texas. And that we have a new day in public law in Texas, and that it be on the side of the people, whether it has anything to do with property insurance or health insurance, consumer rights, as opposed to what we see now, which is just, you know, pretty much whatever the insurance companies want, whatever the commercial side of the life wants, because they're the biggest givers when it comes to donations. I mean, it's a real hell of a setup, you know.
Yes, it is. So there are more questions in the chat, and you're welcome to stay on our Zoom meeting and respond directly to people if you'd like to do that. We understand you've got a busy schedule. We certainly want to make you aware that Stonewall Democrats of Dallas has a very robust endorsement screening process that we will undertake before the primaries, be they held on March 1st as scheduled, or even if they're delayed. So please look for our endorsement committee chair to reach out to you and do fill out the questionnaire and come to screening. We'd love to see that. I would like to just know if you have a favorite dessert. What is that?
Absolutely. Chocolate malt.
Oh, wonderful.
I mean, I can't get enough of that stuff, but I'd say a close second would be I guess a sort of a yellow cake with chocolate buttercream. That's it.
Oh,
I mean, it's classic.
All right, there you have it. All right. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We really, truly appreciate it. If you'd like to go ahead and post your donation link, etc., your website again, we'd love to see that. And go ahead and give us a closing statement, please.
Well, absolutely. As you know, these campaigns require a lot of money, a lot of energy, and a lot of spirit. And this campaign's got it all. I want you guys to know that I started over a year ago. We've raised already $850,000. We are spending it. We are not taking the position that, oh, you know, you just hold on to your money until about 30 days before the election when everyone's, quote, listening. Hey, those days are long gone. People want action now. That is what social media is all about. People want you to win every day. And it seems like the news cycle encourages that, Susie. And so we are proudly cutting ads and running them and broadcasting them on social media. And we are proudly traveling all over the state. We just celebrated our 100th appearance. And I want to thank Tony, my friend, for helping me get in touch with Todd Hill Jones and you, and getting on this, which is our 101st visit within the state of Texas. And we're just getting started. So, you know, I have to promote myself, guys. So forgive me by saying this, but you've got a candidate who wants this badly, not because I need to define who I am in this world. I want to serve because my beautiful state, your beautiful state, is under attack by some people who are not doing their job. My bottom line is, Susie, The GOP has been in charge of the state for 3 decades now, and you can't trust them any longer. They're costing lives, they're costing property damage. And before long, there's going to be an authoritarian touch that's going to stop our right at the ballot box. And we haven't even talked about that, but please go to my website and see what I have to say about that. It will be my honor to continue to be your candidate for Texas Attorney General and to win in November 2022 and change the way government operates in this state so that the people have a voice. Your attorney has arrived, ladies and gentlemen. All you have to do is elect him.
Thank you so much. Very well done. We really appreciate your time and your energy and your passion for service.